It was a moonless night at the patrol watch post, an isolated military checkpoint deep in the forests near the U.S. Canada border. The air was thick with the scent of pine, and the only sounds were the chirping of crickets and the occasional rustle of branches as a cold wind swept through the trees. For Corporal Jess Barnes, this was just another quiet shift in a long series of nights guarding the border. Jess had enlisted after her brother, a decorated soldier, had been killed in action overseas. It was her way of honoring him, carrying on the fight for something bigger than herself. The quiet nights allowed her to reflect, but they also brought a sense of isolation until tonight. Suddenly, the low rumble of motorcycles broke the silence, echoing off the trees. Jess's instincts kicked in. No one passed through this remote post at this hour, especially not on motorcycles. As she peered through the binoculars at the dusty road leading up to the checkpoint, she saw them, a gang of bikers, speeding down the darkened road with a sense of urgency, their bikes growling in the night as they neared the post. Jess keyed her radio, her voice steady and calm. "Q, I've got a group of bikes heading this way. No idea who they are. Requesting backup." The response crackled through the static. "Roger that, Corporal. Backup is on the way, but it'll be a while." Hold tight. Jess knew she'd have to deal with this situation alone for the time being. She had trained for moments like this, but the bikers looked like trouble. They were loud, rebellious, and didn't seem to care for authority, something Jess had seen plenty of in her time on patrol. The leader of the gang, a towering man with a black leather vest and a scar that ran down his cheek, led the group toward the post. Jess's hand rested on her sidearm, but she wasn't reaching for it yet. She needed to assess the situation first. As the bikers pulled up to the checkpoint, they revved their engines, rattling the quiet forest. "What's a little soldier girl doing all the way out here in the middle of nowhere?" the leader called out, his voice dripping with mockery. The others laughed, the sound unsettling in the still night air. Jess stood her ground, her posture firm but unthreatening. "This is a restricted area. Turn around and leave." "Now," the leader scoffed, stepping off his bike and approaching her. "You think you can stop us?" "We don't take orders from anyone, especially not from some lonely soldier on a watchtower." Jess didn't flinch. She had faced tougher situations in the past. But these bikers were different. They weren't here for a simple confrontation. They were here to make a statement, and they wanted to see how far they could push her. As the leader took another step toward her, one of his crew members, a wiry man with a leather jacket, lunged forward, trying to knock Jess's rifle from her hands. Jess spun, using the momentum to land a quick punch to his gut, knocking the wind out of him. She'd trained in hand-to-hand combat, and it showed. The bikers stumbled back, gasping for air, but the others started to move in, surrounding her. The leader, unfazed by his companion's failure, stepped up to her, his grin wide. "You're outnumbered, little girl. This isn't your fight." But Jess didn't back down. Instead, she took a deep breath, her eyes sharp and focused. "It's my fight the moment you threaten my post, and I'm not backing down." Suddenly, a deep voice came over the radio. "Backup's 2 minutes out, Corporal. Hold tight." The bikers froze for a moment, their confidence wavered. Jess used that split second to her advantage. Without hesitation, she grabbed a flare from her belt and fired it into the sky. The bright streak lit up the night, signaling the approaching military convoy. It wouldn't be long before the reinforcements arrived. Seeing the flare, the biker's leader cursed under his breath. He turned to his gang, his tone shifting from cocky to serious. "Let's get out of here. This isn't worth it." Jess watched as the gang slowly started their engines, clearly annoyed at having been outsmarted. The leaders shot one last scowl at Jess before they peeled out into the night, leaving nothing but the faint sound of their engines fading into the distance. As the military convoy arrived minutes later, Jess stood tall, her heart pounding from the adrenaline of the encounter. The backup soldiers approached her, nodding in respect. "You handled that well, Corporal," one of them said. "You didn't let them push you around." Jess simply nodded, watching the dark road where the bikers had vanished. Sometimes, you don't need to fight to win. You just have to stand your ground. As she turned back to the post, she felt a quiet sense of pride. Her brother had taught her that courage wasn't about being the biggest or the toughest. It was about knowing when to fight and when to make the right call. Tonight, she had done both. The forest was quiet once more, and Jess returned to her watch, knowing that her duty, just like the road ahead, was always uncertain, but it was hers to defend.